I know that Commissioner Skillen is planning on joining us, so maybe I'll give it one more minute. Yeah.
Sounds like New England out there.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
This place
It
reminds me.
is. It's great as long as you don't leave the sunroof open on your car
Oh, yeah.
when you're parked in downtown
Oh.
Grand Marais. That's
Bad
just not
idea.
good.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of like a fake soundtrack we had going in the back to some kind of ambiance, but that's...
Yeah.
It is
Well,
the
it's-
sound of Grand Marais, for
It-
sure.
This Chamber of Commerce doesn't recruit those gulls.
I think that's a pro bono activity,
Yeah.
the goals.
Coming in for the first time, it reminded me so much of the coast of Maine without the salt smell.
Oh, right, yeah.
But otherwise, it's just,
Yeah.
the same kind of rocky.
The coastline, yeah.
Well, there was the Star Tribune had a piece on quaint Minnesota lake towns.
Mhm.
And number one was Grand Marais. It was really great. Nice piece, kind of highlighted stuff that you could do if you were in Grand Marais for
Was this
tourists.
recent?
This is just, well, it was maybe yesterday or today in
Oh,
the
really
Star
recent?
Tribune.
great.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna close this out. I
It
don't
was a
know.
special
Because,
article
yeah,
on,
mine is,
cute lake
has the
towns
wireless
or something like
button
that.
at the bottom.
I'm sure
There
visiting
were
the counties
20
all
of
over
them.
it.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
all these icons. I can do this on my cell phone, but
Regularly in the top,
I'll just,
in the list of
I
top.
think I have pretty much what I need on hard copy.
Well, it is the coolest small town in America.
This is true.
In
Yeah,
more ways than one.
Climate reports,
My
yeah.
son is,
For multiple reasons, that's an
Yeah.
accurate
Yeah.
assessment.
his business is in Chicago and he works for Fortune 500 companies fixing
Not a
their
duress, but
computer
I
glitches.
understand the history of it, but
He loves this stuff.
I guess
He loves
Oh,
learning
I
new
see.
stuff.
If
I do
something
not love
happens,
it.
you.
And it
I
doesn't
know.
mean just like a
Once I can,
policy.
once
We
it
don't,
works
that's
for me.
just
Once it works, I'm good with it. I really
emotional
do.
duress doesn't.
The learning curve?
Sure, my
I
knee
I
doesn't
just don't
touch
enjoy
it.
it.
It's pretty now what I-
And then they
The learning-
change something and it doesn't look the same, or it makes me crazy.
Do you think we should start without him with a quorum here, Chair? Or do you want to wait?
Well, what do we got? 3:00 something?
3:02?
Oh, okay.
We'll give him 1 or 2 more minutes, maybe, I think.
Yeah.
I had an impromptu meeting with him this afternoon at City Hall, so I know that he's around.
Well, you don't have to wait more than one more minute.
There he is.
So who knows?
Perfect.
So who knows the history of this at my seat?
Oh, I think the Violence Prevention Center was passing those around
Oh, okay.
for,
At the 4th of July?
no, for,
Oh, it's been here a long time.
it's been they did it like 2 years in a row, and
The project.
it was in celebration of
Slowly but
something, but I
surely.
don't know, it was,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
But,
an historical piece.
Thank you.
It's been there for 40 years. We should know that.
There's a curse on it. If you touch it, you die.
all right. Having all present, we will call the meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is approval of the June minutes. And I believe in the amended packet that Jason sent, he made a change that I requested in the minutes. Item number 3, in the first iteration, said resolution approving the 2023 budget request, and actually it's the levy request that the county must approve, our levy request. So we have made that change.
Yes.
All right. That being said, I would entertain a motion to
I'll move to
approve.
approve the minutes.
And a second.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved, 5-0. Thank you. And we move to new business, and the first thing we have is the procurement policy recommendation. Jason, you want to walk us through that?
Sure, Chair. First of all, did commissioners get a chance to take a look at the lengthy packet of all the pages? Did you get a chance to look at the policy? Did you have any questions out the gate that I could address?
Can you just give an example of the contract versus PSA? I understand. What would be an example of a contract, and what do you see?
Sure. So really there's the note at the bottom. The reason that they're differentiated is because statute calls out contracts as a specific thing. And typically when we're talking about contracts for any municipality, it's something, in this case, it's something that the HRA would be contracting for their benefits. So think of like if we were building an HRA office, or the HRA were having something done on behalf of the institution or the agency itself, that would be that contract category.
So if, for example, if we were to build a pilot project or a pilot housing project, we would sign a contract with the builder to do that. Okay.
I think, for me, a simple way that I think is correct in understanding is contract is for a thing as opposed to a service.
Yep, property.
Good, yeah.
That's a good way of differentiating it. So,
Thanks.
yep. And again, the thresholds, the 25 to and so on, over 75, that's all in statute. So
Okay.
I didn't make those up.
Great. Thank you.
The bottom ones I made up, so those are open for discussion if you'd like to. But there's some logic behind it, but I'm happy to go through any of that.
And the PSA at $7,500 or less, director secures through direct negotiations, but with board approval?
Correct. Yep. This is still
before-
subject to the spending threshold
Okay.
approvals. It's just that
Okay.
what kind of procurement policy is required or standards.
To go out and.
Correct. Do I
get
need to do a
quotes
sealed
or-
bid process? Do I need to get 2 quotes? That sort of thing.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Move approval of the procurement policy.
Looking for a second?
I'll second it.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? All right, procurement policy approved, 5-0. And then, Resolution 22-5, authorizing the executive director to enter into an agreement for professional service with Ellers Incorporated. Again?
Sure. So I've been talking with the board for a couple of months now about this, and trying to find professional services so that we can actually dig into some projects. And there's a little bit of chicken and egg, but now that we we formally have the threshold in the PSA procedures approved as of 2 minutes ago. So, but this falls under that threshold anyhow. And the intent really is to queue up these two, I'll start with 22.5 with Ellers, to be able to engage them if we have a project that we've been talking about, various projects. If one comes to fruition, at least we get down that path, we have somebody to engage right away. I believe that Bruce Kimmel of Ellers has been working with the county on some things, and I've worked with Ellers for about 7 years. I've had the chance to present at their conference. They've been a really great partner. They're very knowledgeable. So they're just someone who I'm familiar with, that I work well with. But again, it's really to get a partner on at the table, and then of course next year we can revisit and we could do a different amount with different folks if we wanted to. But this is in the interest of my familiarity and expediency to get a contract. And they're excited to work with us if we choose to do that.
And I would support that background. Jason, Ellers has worked with the county and the city and the EDA, and they're familiar with our community, and I think that's beneficial. The learning curve is non-existent until it comes to a specific project,
Right.
of course. So I just wanted to add that. And then, Bill?
Just a couple things. Is Bruce Kimmel our contact? I mean, the Freiberger contract, it was very specific as to who the lead was, and the Ellers contract, nothing wrong with it, but it just doesn't, it's not as specific. It doesn't say who's going to work on our behalf, and that's partly important because they are consultant to the city, the county, and everybody else. And, there could be conflicts in that. I'm not saying there are at this level.
Sure.
Believe me. But it just is something that we ought to know who we're dealing with from Ellers. That's my main point, I guess. And
Commissioner, that's a great point. Jason Arsvald would be the main point of contact for the time being, who doesn't work with the county, to my understanding.
I'm not familiar with him.
I asked him about that sort of relationship. Also, the contact, is going to be project specific. So if we were talking about bonding, for example, we would work with a certain person versus tax abatement or something like that. So,
Sure.
but what they told me, and of course we could talk to them further to make sure there's no conflict. But for now, they said that Jason would be the main point, and we would see what services we would need.
And it's
Would
my
you
understanding that Bruce Kimmel has retired from the firm.
Well, he was working as long as I was in the business, and I know Bruce, and he's, and I know Ellers as well, but, and I don't have any problem with him, but I just think the importance more is identifying somebody that is our first point of
Great
contact.
point.
And yes, they have a lot of other expertise.
Yeah,
but-
Thank you for
yeah,
mentioning
Bruce
that.
did a great job. He was great to work with.
Would you say Jason's last name again?
Arsvold, it's AARSVOLD.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I'd move approval of the Ellers contract.
I have some questions. Do we want to?
Yep.
Let's
Do
do
that
a second, and then we'll go to
Okay.
discussion.
I'll second it then.
Okay, and then Commissioner Doe?
I wanted to ask, I'm unfamiliar with like the scope of work on here. Does that look pretty standard to everybody that knows more than I do about this? Does that look pretty typical in the scope of work? Bill, would you think
I
that?
thought it was, yeah, I thought it was pretty complete and
Okay,
And,
All right.
gives us what we want in an opening contract too, that, this is going to be an experience and we'll refine
yeah,
as we go for what we need. But
Good.
I thought it was a good start.
Then the other question I had is when I worked with lawyers in Michigan, they had an hourly rate, but they billed in 15-minute increments. So, and they had, back in those days, they had a timer. You called them up, they hit a timer on their desk. And if you went 20 minutes, it was a half-hour billing. If you went 35 minutes, it was 3/4 of an hour. So I wonder how these folks bill, and when I did the math on this for our $5,000 limit, according to their hourly rates here, we can get somewhere between 17 and 25 hours for the year. And my question, again, is does that seem adequate? The other thing is on the TIF districts, we can get, if I'm reading this correctly, the first one, we can get a third of that done. The second one, we can get less than half. The third one, we can get somewhere between a third and a half, and then we're out of money. So my question is on the TIF districts, is there other sources of money besides our 5,000 that goes into that?
Yeah, Jared, I can address all those.
Okay.
So first, with regard to the hourly question, my experience with them has been they don't do the 15-minute time clock situation. And they usually bill like on a project, on a monthly basis. So if we're working on a specific project, so often what will happen is we'll get I'll call them up and ask, hey, we're thinking about a project at this location, here are the details, can you kind of run a scenario for me? They'll charge for the time that it takes to run that scenario, and then they'll bill, like I said, usually it's monthly. And so to do that, maybe it's $400, depending on how big of a pro forma they had to build out, that sort of thing. With regard to the amount, sure, we could talk about increasing it from 5,000, but the abatement and TIF district situations, those costs we would pass on to the developer.
Okay.
So as part of the contract with the developer, we'd say, we're going to be a pass-through. So whatever they charge us, we're passing through to them. So that's not as big of a concern. This is just more of a, and also just a quick sidebar, it could also be the case that any specific project we can build to the project or find the developer to pay for. This is more for odds and ends and conversations like, hey, how does bonding work in this situation? Or can you check the rate market for this? Because we need to have some sort of standing contract to engage them so that they can answer the questions.
Okay.
That's more what this is trying to address.
So at this point of our organization, the 17 to 25 hours for the year probably will be adequate.
I'm hopeful. If it's not, again, there's a little bit of margin in the budget as it's currently conceived, and we could go back to this, or we could do another contract. We could increase it. We have a bunch of flexibility in that regard.
All right.
Can I, question of clarification, I think I read this $5,000 is for just through the calendar year 22.
Correct. Just through the end of the year.
Not for 12 months
Yep.
starting now, but for 6 months starting now.
Yeah, yes, Jared. In fact, because the budget hasn't been solidified for next year,
Right.
I thought we would do that through the end of the year and then see what the next year holds.
Perfect. Thank you.
So on our proposed budget for next year, there's more than 5,000?
Currently, there was proposed 7,500 for legal and 7,500 for
Okay.
financial
For
consultants.
next year's budget? Okay, okay, very good, all right.
Anything else?
Anything else?
All right, with that, then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving this agreement with Ellers, aye.
Right?
Aye.
And that is 5-0. There are none opposed.
Thank you, Chair.
And then moving along to a similar proposal for legal services with Freiberger, Buchanan, Smith, and Frederick, again, through the end of calendar year 2022, for a total of $5,000.
Sure, I'll give it, go ahead, sorry, Chair.
I see Bill is,
Oh, I didn't see your hand there.
Perhaps Jason wants to make a,
You
I was
wanna
going to
do a
call
little
it, I
entree
was
here?
going to make the motion. But
Okay, I'll make it brief then. Similar situation, where I've worked with these folks in my capacity at the city of Duluth and the HRA of Duluth. And they were actually the council, and they might have said that in their attached exhibit, they were assisted the HRA. So the HRA in Duluth doesn't have its own council like the city does. They have to contract, and this is who they use. So I've worked with them for several years, and a couple of the folks, Chris Verda, who you had mentioned, Bill, he's the main point of contact. He's well steeped in the ways of the HRA, and others are in their firm as well. So again, I had asked around about local capacity and the knowledge of HRAs, and well, we hadn't had one yet, so there wasn't any, as far as I could tell. So this is just a way to get us started so we can dig into some of those questions. I already have a list going that I will send if this is approved to get going. But yeah, happy to take any questions about this. In particular, it's obviously very similar to the Ellers contract.
Well, I'd move approval of the resolution to get that going and open the discussion, if
Thank
there is
you.
some.
Bill, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Just, Jason, looking through, one question, I'm not seeing the billing rates, I see the total cap in the 5,000, but do you know roughly what they bill at?
Depends on who's doing it. I
Yeah.
can get those if you would like me to, sure.
Just a rough estimate, I'm just, but that's fine. I don't have it.
You know what, I'll get it anyway, and then I'll send it out to the board.
Yeah.
It's a good thing to have.
I had to note that Mary Frances Scala is still practicing.
Yes.
We were both young one time, and in the business together, more or less. She's younger than I am, but it was nice. She is truly a pro. Her background is complete in anything we'd want to know, so I was happy to see she's still there, as opposed to Bruce Kimmel, I guess.
I see on
She's really-
the second page.
That's for Ellers, sure.
Oh, I put my packet together backwards.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the flip, yeah.
Turn the page. Okay.
Commissioner Gabler, it sounds like you must have got out of the business too early because all of your colleagues are still practicing.
Well, maybe I got run out of the business.
I just want to make sure Freiberger, Stacy, does Freiberger represent the county? Is Bob Tofty with Freiberger?
I believe so.
Tofty is, yep.
So, again, we can have an attorney in the same firm as long as it's not the same attorney.
Correct, and we just have to have a signed, basically acknowledgement of
Disclosure
yep, and consent from both parties that that's appropriate.
And shouldn't their hourly rate be part of the contract?
It depends on what services we're providing, again, or what we're asking them to do and how much, and who is going to be doing it. So again,
I understand that,
Yep.
but on the other contract, they listed all that out.
Yeah, and then frankly, I thought it was included in there as well. I
I
had,
just looked through it quickly, I didn't,
didn't
but
see it
I
again?
may have missed it, but it.
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I really liked their examples. I thought that was
Yeah.
wonderful. I really
Yeah.
appreciated
No, it's
that, but
very-
I did not see anything about fees in it.
yeah, I do know I asked them to trim it down because there were 36 pages originally on their exhibit. Yeah, most of it was the resumes, and I said, yeah, we can
Yeah.
get, but it could have been, so I've seen it, but it could have been accidental that was attached to it or something. So I'm happy to go back, and if you would like to postpone this, we can, and I can go back and get those from Freiberg, it's fine, whatever the board wants to do.
I suggest approving it, and if you follow up and get
Yeah.
their list and share it with the commissioners.
Yes.
Happy to
that
do
would
so.
be okay.
You have approval up to the 5,000, it's really you have control over whether to pull the trigger.
To use it or not.
Right.
Well, and again, if
You'll
the
get more hours out
response
of them if
is,
they're using cheaper associates.
if their response to that question is that it depends on what we're asking for, then we'll just get maybe a quote for the work ahead of time.
Well, it probably just varies by, I'm sure,
Basic
it just
services.
varies by who's
High
doing the work.
level of-
And so
yeah.
they can give us a range, paralegals this much, and
Right.
senior partners
Yeah.
this much.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Right, so if it's, I presume that Mr. Bird is going to be the primary contact, but there might be some things that he as a paralegal do some research on and so on. So I'll get that rate breakdown and I'll send it to commissioners.
I would think that a lot of their work is going to be specific to financings and giving approving opinions that we can do this and it's legal and the interest is tax exempt. And those are all charges that are borne by the financing itself. You know, it wouldn't be borne by us as an administrative fee. That's at least the industry practice, so.
I'm hoping so. I think, like I said, I have some questions initially about, for Freiberger that won't be for a specific project, but that helps us set the table. So there'll be some of that, but I suspect most of it can be, to your point, brought back to the project.
I can hardly wait till we get to that point, believe me.
Me too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Me too. Any other questions from the board about this contract?
All right, then we'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I see a vote of 5-0. The agreement is approved. The next item on the agenda is the financial update. That is the last page of the packet.
Yes, I think Commissioner mentioned it previously, the only thing that should have changed is the desk. I think, since the last time.
Hey, wait.
Sorry. I know, there's a desk. I'm happy to take questions about the desk. And then the antivirus software that we had to get a membership for. The free trial ran out, I guess. So.
and we're now using AT&T for your cell phone rather
Yes,
than
and the chair had a question about
previously?
that too.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, the $590 amount is about $84 a month for the remainder of the year. I just put because we know what the amount's going to be, I'm
Sure.
just putting it on there as a placeholder.
Great.
So that's not the monthly charge.
Okay,
It's not that
I
nice of a
was
phone.
confused because in May it was $489.95
That was to purchase the cell
to
phone.
buy the phone.
Yep.
Wow, that's a cheap, good
Well,
deal.
We did.
Did you get a flip phone or?
No, but it's a Nokia. It's one of the solid ones with the press. No, it's. They had an arrangement where we could do. I just did some contract finagling, so we amortized the cost over 2 years, and then it was cheaper.
Okay, very good, that's good. That's why I thought this was a monthly.
No,
When
it's
I
about
saw
$85
it,
a month.
we're already up to $489, and then, so that's why I thought. that.
Understandably so.
Wow.
Yeah, sorry for the confusion on that.
Good, no, perfect. I like it when I'm wrong about stuff like that.
Yeah, me too.
Any other comments or questions about our current financial position?
Do you, just for convenience, do you have a charge card, or what do you have for?
I do.
Okay.
I worked with the auditor's office to have I have a county credit card that then I work with the auditor's office on a monthly billing cycle to
Got it.
fill out the vouchers for all that, yeah.
Just want to make sure that's convenient.
Yeah, it became apparent pretty quickly that they didn't want to have to deal with it when I was trying to pay for things too, so
Right.
it works for everyone. And the amount, again, is pretty nominal on a monthly basis.
Yep.
All right, then. Moving right along to the director items, the public property list.
Yes, Chair, a couple things. I think I had mentioned to the board at the meeting last week when we were talking about the housing study or the analysis. So I think everybody should have a copy. That's just the list of publicly owned parcels that are not Forest Service or DNR. So in other words, parcels that in theory could be provided for some use. So I went through the county database and looked through all of the public parcels and then winnowed them down. And this is as far as I can tell, the complete list of potentially appropriate parcels that are owned in various places for various reasons, and then I tried to discern whether or not they would be candidates for development of housing. And so you can see on there the yes, maybe, and no categories.
And again, just one clarification. So these are publicly owned, so does it make a difference whether it's owned by the county or the city or the hospital or whatever? Do all those qualify as public?
Yep. And so on the margin on the left here, you'll have county.
Got it, okay.
And then there's Tofty,
Got
and
it.
then Schroeder and Grand Marais.
Oh, yeah.
And so in the county, some of them, some on the list are tax-funded, and some are just county-owned.
Okay.
The intent here was just, multiple people and then in the community have also talked about, well, what public lands are available, and I thought, well, I'll just kind of go through the slow process of weeding through all of them. And to be clear, I haven't communicated with any of these other entities about the availability of these parcels. It's just, this is what's in the public database and what's owned by who. Because it doesn't, until you look at it from a development perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense to ask them, what would they give us? So this is the first go around at looking, and as you can see, there's not a lot, frankly, which I think most people knew, but I thought it'd be better to get it on paper. So we know as things come up, for example, there's a parcel on there that the town of Tofty owns, the Birch Grove school lot. And then immediately to the west of that, there's a county piece of property, I believe, that's contiguous with that. So for that purpose, being able to map them out and understand where opportunities might align or where there might be if a private parcel comes available next to another public parcel, maybe there's things that make more sense.
I'm not positive, but I think that one that's to the west of the one behind Birch Grove, it could be the gravel pit.
Yeah, it looked like there was some activity back there, and I'm not sure what.
And the road going in there goes up to Carlton Peak, which has been annexed to Temperance River State Park.
It's right adjacent to the park.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not even, I didn't check the title or the
Deep
reporting for any,
into
correct,
the-
yeah.
yeah.
That would be a lot of work for all of these.
No, yeah, yeah.
But if there was anything that was jumping out and glaringly obvious as a candidate, then I would do the deeper dive and talk to that entity.
That property behind Birch Grove has been explored. Some of the civil engineering has been done. I think I shared with
Yep.
you a site plan that.
For townhomes, I believe is what it was.
It was a mix of single-family and townhomes and apartments and small, tiny houses. So it has a lot of potential, I think. But I haven't talked with anyone on the Tofty Town Board lately about that, but it's a good one, I think.
Just one question on the Grand Marais properties. I'm not familiar with the limits of the utility services in Grand Marais. Do those extend up to like these properties on the border of the Gunflint Trail? Or,
Yes, depends on where. So there's about a 10-acre parcel. I think we talked about this previously. This ask
on
there.
the east side. Yeah.
Yep, on the east side of the Gunflint, and I was actually just at Mike Roth's office today talking to him about that parcel.
Okay.
I'm going to go to council next week, to city council, and discuss that as an opportunity to partner with the HRA. So just as far as, again, utilities are only available in Grand Marais.
Right.
And where, it depends.
Okay.
Well, I have to ask the city for every, each specific parcel may or may not have good access.
Okay, thanks.
What are the asterisks on, I don't see a key for, some of these yeses have an asterisk on them.
Oh, sorry, that was for my own reference. So if you look at the notes, the asterisk is, so the one on the, by Grand Marais,
Yeah,
it's just because the Sawtooth Bluff, the parcel is so large that a part of it might be appropriate for housing development,
Got it.
but the other part's going to be used for the bluffs.
okay.
For the recreation area.
Correct, yeah.
Any further discussion about that?
No, this is really useful.
Yeah, this is real good.
Great.
Yeah, it's very good, yep.
I'm just trying to, and I'm happy to share this with other entities. It's just a way to create some sort of framework or baseline to know what's really out there and not.
Is there any way to do something similar with privately owned land? And approaching landowners if they would be willing to sell parts of their larger land holdings off for housing development?
Commissioner, yes, there is. The question on that becomes really identifying, doing that one at a time for very specific sites. So, because you'd want to figure out, well, what are we trying to build and why would we want it at that site?
Yeah, that
If
makes sense. Yep.
So if we identified, hey, this would be a really perfect place to put X type of housing product, wonder what the private owners who seem to be absent or don't need all of it or something.
Yep,
Then we
okay,
would approach them.
excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is the EDA public land on here?
The business park, I did not put the business park on there. They, just as an update, by the way, thank you, Chair, for jogging my memory. The EDA did get approval for the business park, the BDA zoning language in Grand Marais to be changed, so that previously, the western side of the site allowed for home occupation and business, and now the entire site allows for those things. So now,
Of the developed
yep.
part, within the circle of the business park. But there's those lots on the Gunflint and the
Correct.
15 acres above that maybe we would want to.
Yep, I've been working with Beth on that. I'm waiting for that to get in front of the EDA board again, because they had expressed at least openness to talking about particularly the 15 acres to the north, which is zoned residential right now. So it's not actually a part of the business park. It's just owned by the EDA at the north end. Otherwise, the Council and Planning Commission decided that they really wanted to make sure the intent of the new change to the zoning allowed occupation for employees of the business there, but not general housing.
Right.
In other words, it's not just, you can't build a multifamily parcel in the business park. You have to have a business operating there, and the housing supports that business.
Right.
So for most purposes, it would not be something that we would likely get involved with, because it would be a 1 or 2 unit
Yeah.
thing for
No.
the businesses.
Yeah, not within Cedar Grove, but the 15 acres and the 2 lots on the trail.
Yep, it's kind of in the hands of the EDA to,
Come back and talk
Yeah,
about that
yeah.
some more.
I'm happy, ready, willing, and able to
Yeah.
talk about it, but
Likewise. I've been talking about those for a long time.
I'm gathering. Yeah. You know a thing or two about that.
I
So.
do know something about that.
Any other general questions about this or adjacent topics here?
Good job, thanks.
Oh, yeah, thank you, you're welcome. I suppose that just the one other thing I had on the directors, to add to the directors list here on the agenda, I wrote in B, you don't have a B, but I handed out this survey, that the chair asked me to bring the survey that I had, rough draft of the survey to send out. I mentioned the meeting last week, trying to get a gauge from the public about what their ideas or need for a rehab program is. So I've been meeting with other agencies like AEOA and Minnesota Housing and all of the usual suspects about what programs they have. And what I don't want us to do is recreate something that they already offer. So I thought this might be a handy tool and maybe hopefully an easy way to gain at least some feedback and understand what the needs really are, where they might be, and whether existing programs might already address that. And we just need to do some dot connecting, so to speak, instead of recreating a program. The City of Grand Marais is still interested in doing a potential rehab program, and I met with the Lloyd K. Johnson Foundation about some resources there, and we said there might be some ways to plug in. Again, MHFA already has a rehab programming through AEOA and others, so this might be a way of getting some handle on what the real need may or may not be and what type it might be. So again, this is a draft. I am very open to changing anything on it. I wanted to keep it to 10 questions or less to make it easy to do.
See,
And how would this get
there's
distributed?
not enough.
So I would, it would actually be online. This is just the text. It would be a sort of click and next idea, like a Survey Monkey or that sort of tool. And we would distribute it similar to how,
Can you share with Commissioner?
oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
No, that's okay.
That's really riveting stuff. I'm sorry you can't see it. It would be similar to how the Land Services Department just did their survey request for the vacation rental conversation. So it would be sent out through some media channels and posted on the website, and we would just try to blast, hey, we'd love your feedback. Again, it's not a perfect tool. Nothing is, and there's going to be some self-selection, but if we don't get a good enough response, we could explore sending it through the utility company and seeing if they'd be willing to add it as an attachment. I've done that in the past.
What about folks that don't have any connectivity?
Connectivity to,
If this is a computer, internet survey, what about folks that don't have computers or live out of ways, don't have any connectivity?
that is an inherent challenge. Yep, so if we, I think, like I was saying, if we don't get a robust enough response, then I would explore things like talking to Arrowhead Electric and seeing if we could send it out with their bills. One of the challenges, of course, is timing.
Yeah.
So the fastest way to do it is to do electronically and blast that it's out there and see what kind of information we get. We don't want to exclude folks that don't have connectivity, but then reaching, I mean, we could do both too. We could do, it's not an either or, we could try to do both.
Could this be printed in the newspaper?
Maybe. I haven't
For a
explored that.
price.
For a price. Then we have to, see, the Survey Monkey route is I don't know, $10 or whatever
Right.
the, so that's another reason that's
Okay.
easy.
Another way to reach some of those folks might be if you go on the radio
WTIP and tell them about
and
it.
tell them about it, and
Uh-huh.
tell them that it's available by calling Jason on the phone, and you could mail it to them, or...
Yeah, they could come into the office
They
and I'd be
could come
happy to
and pick
give
it
them a
up
piece of
or-
paper and have them,
Good.
yep,
Good idea.
yep.
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Great question.
Jason, do you know if anyone is collecting data on existing rehab programs? I mean, I know Minnesota Housing's got one through AOA. How much of that has been done in Cook County? And over what period of time is my interest? Because having the programs, theoretically available and getting them down to where they're used are two different things. And a lot of people, might not want to bother with the paperwork of Minnesota Housing, and because I'm thinking, how can we really actually help get some rehab going in Cook County? And I don't think we can depend on a lot of other people to do that. I think at some point this might be a vector we ought to be pursuing ourselves, and I know how to do that, and at least I know the basics of it, because it's been done elsewhere.
Yeah.
And it's going to require some conversations with the local banks and the credit union, but.
And we are having those conversations
Yeah, and
with
that's,
the banks.
and for them, a key question when you're talking to them is, what's their appetite for tax exempt income? They'll, the banks will have some, the credit union probably will not, which is, it's also, the second question is then what's your appetite for getting into housing rehab loans or something? I mean, those are just conversations we should be having, and I think that, there are other programs, but I can't imagine who collects that data except maybe AOA. AEOA would have it.
They have done some work here in Cook County.
Yeah.
I've done some work with them. We've also done in Cook County some rehab work with small cities. Small cities, I don't know if the rest of a grant from the
Small
small
city grants.
cities. And in that case, in the small cities, they, a long time ago, gave a grant to the EDA. It was like 20 years ago. It was way before I was doing this. But they gave a grant to the EDA, and the EDA created a revolving loan fund. And so we might be able to explore that avenue as well. AEOA, one of their rehab programs, I don't know if they have more than one, but one of them, you have to designate a neighborhood to do the work, because they want to have an impact
Sure.
that, measurable and easy to acknowledge and recognize. And that has potential. Did you meet with Scott? So Scott Zohorik is the executive director of the AEOA, and we can talk about that more later, or you can tell the board if you have any more to say right now. But the survey is the first step for us to maybe gain an understanding of what it is we want to do. Then we can go look for some of those partners. And yeah, we're going to put your name as the chair of the rehab committee, and
Well,
I'll buy you a new hammer.
Scratching his chin.
if nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve. I think that was one of the presidents that said that, but I think,
No,
back
but
to
I-
Commissioner Doe's point, maybe we need to get looking for some additional budget authority to hire a little more staff to support Jason along
Yeah.
those lines.
No, but
anyway,
your
I'm
expertise
happy to
will be
work.
valuable
I'm
as we
happy to
work
work
through.
on it, yeah.
Yeah. I think that, at the finance end of it is really helpful, the two of you discussing that. It seems like you have a lot of experience with that. My question would be, once the money's available, once we've identified the rehab, who's going to do the work?
Well, that's a great
in
question.
this
I
county.
would think between you and Commissioner Skildum to be thinking about is just all, it's different than going out and building a single-family home or
Yeah.
an apartment building, you know that.
Yeah.
And are there people around who are, could do rehab work, fix drywall or, I don't know what's all involved, electric?
That's why it's good that in this survey is that, I think one of the big reasons is the answer C to number 7, I cannot find a contractor. That's gonna be huge, and it is huge, it already is. There's
Yeah.
people that want to rehab their homes currently that might even have access to the funding that can't find a contractor.
Yeah.
So, oh, go ahead.
In this county, in the cities, all my work was in historic and vintage homes. And people that did that kind of work in the cities never hired union trained carpenters, because the union tradespeople are trained on new construction, which has been standardized after World War II. Before that, it wasn't standardized. So all these companies would hire mostly young folks, either out of high school or just out of college or just young folks, and train them on the job site to do that kind of essentially remodeling and rehabbing of these historic and vintage homes. In Cook County, I noticed in the housing report, they talked about remodeling or rehabbing being a bit of a problem because some of the homes are built by quote-unquote amateur builders, which really adds an additional layer to the problem solving that good rehab has to happen. And that is a niche of tradespeople that's pretty narrow in any environment. To get rehab that actually functions like you want it to function is tough.
I'd like to add to that, in rehab, in this community, one thing is that lots of homes are built by people who weren't builders. Even if they were built by builders, they were built over several decades of different construction types and methods and materials.
Yeah.
So it's almost easier, new construction, at least you can get plans and instructions and installation manuals from manufacturers. Rehab, typically, you're having to have a knowledge of decades upon decades of construction techniques, methods, and troubleshooting options. So it's, I mean, not to be a Debbie Downer, but that's.
It's a fact.
Yeah, it's a fact, it's,
Yep.
It's really hard to build in something that's not square, right?
right,
Yeah.
right.
Just as a,
And you know that. Jason's done some rehab.
I have,
work himself.
I've done rehabs on the turn of the century four squares and ramblers from the 70s and mobile homes and log cabins. I think I've rehabbed everything except for new construction, which I don't have to rehab, thank God. So,
Time.
Wait, who's your builder?
oh yeah, better not be one of those fly-by-night guys. Can't reach them. All of that to say, I've
Back to 7C.
yeah. Back who can I find to fix my brand new? I fully can personally fully appreciate the rehab challenges that exist. I've done some houses, and I know that it always costs more than you think, and particularly up here, finding somebody when you find a problem that will take time out of their jobs to do a 3-hour job is almost impossible sometimes. It's just it's really difficult. So having said all of that, there were a couple things I wanted to address that Commissioner Giebler had said. One, to answer your question, no one that I know of has collected these sort of matrix of options for rehab programs in Cook County. I'm starting to do that because no one else has done it, so I've realized, there isn't a sort of, as far as I've seen, there isn't a collection of those resources.
Have you, just to,
Yep.
have you talked to CCLAP
Yes.
and about what they've,
Yep.
how they've been handling? Okay,
Yep.
just checking.
Yeah, I met with Kat. Actually, Commissioner O'Brien introduced us. We had a great conversation.
Yeah.
And so part of this intent is to see, again, what the real needs are. Is it windows? Is it, because that's going to dictate, one, the kind of resources we can procure for it. So, for example, CCLAP, they're mostly interested or targeting sustainability and energy efficiencies. That's going to be different than someone who needs, has a very outdated or dangerous kitchen or something like that, right? Whereas public health is trying to do health in the home, and they have a small grant to go in homes and assess for health concerns. So there's a lot of moving potential partners, but until we have a better handle on what exactly the biggest needs are, because there isn't a program that can address all of them well. We could address all of them, kind of. So when I was doing work for the HRA at the City of Duluth, they had a program through HUD Rehab Program, and to your point, Commissioner, the program, developing it's one thing, getting it used is entirely different. And it turned out to be the case that it wasn't very well utilized. So my team and I went back and looked at the program guidelines, and we revamped them and changed them because they weren't useful. If the private market's already doing it, or if the terms aren't appealing enough to go through the red tape or the paperwork, then people aren't going to do it. So we have to find not only what is needed, but then what are the tools and what's going to be most useful so people will use the tool we create or offer. And it's not as easy as you would think. A lot of times agencies seem, well, we have the money available, they just need to come in and do this thing. And a lot of people will say, I don't want the headache, or it's not enough, or the terms aren't good enough, I'll just not do it.
Yeah.
Not to mention the contractor shortage. Like, that happens all the time. So I've done 2 rehab programs now, and both times it was revamping and like going to contractors and going to people and saying, what would it take for you to use this? Because I don't want to waste our time setting something up and having money sitting around if we can't get it in the community. It's not great.
Yeah.
So this, to your point, Chair, my intent is anyway, and we can add or take away whatever you want. Let's get a baseline of what the need is and roughly where it is, and then figure out, okay, what are there existing resources that we can connect to, or is there a missing link here that we might be able to fill? And I don't know, I suspect there will be, but I'd rather find out first as much as we can.
Question. So I think that as I read the survey, it seems targeted at properties that are owner-occupied and will remain owner-occupied. And I'm wondering if it's more likely that that kind of rehab work would happen on the sale of a property, like between either paid for by the current owner or the future owner, or and I'm wondering if that is in fact the most likely time when the rehab work would happen, when the building is unoccupied or between owners.
It wasn't the intent to target homeowners. There's a renter or homeowner question in there. I refer to it as home instead of apartment, I suppose.
Right, okay.
My hope is, and I can change whatever language to make that more clear. The hope is, one of the programs the HRA had in Duluth is targeted toward landlords, to say, hey, landlords, if you're not, maybe there's an incentive we can provide you to rehab the home for your tenants.
Got it, okay.
Because if a landlord, and I'm not saying, Chris, you're a landlord, and so this is not true of landlords writ large, but if someone is charging rent and there's nothing that's imminently broken, don't fix it. Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But it might be a better health experience or quality of life experience if they could find the funding to catch up on it now. So to your point, though, I don't know where in the process how would you think we could insert it so that it would be more useful for?
Well, like the second question, do you own your home or rent it? Well, are people that are renters, they're probably not in a great position to do much rehab work on the house?
No.
That's a landlord, and so would they then, so the survey doesn't apply to them, or what's?
Well, they might not be able to be the person to receive the funds, but they could answer the questions on the survey to communicate their situation as a renter, and that would help.
And then we could talk to the
maybe
landlord
target
about
where those efforts get put
Yeah.
towards.
Okay.
Exactly, that's and honestly, they might be, they might be too honest about the problems, if they're renting. They might say, everything needs work, and hopefully they would share that information. Either way, it gives us an idea of the housing stock needs, regardless of ownership.
I guess where I'm going is I'm trying to figure out who is motivated to try to solve. We're talking about there's lots of problems, but
Sure,
because it's hard to do, but who's motivated to solve those problems? And But, yeah, I mean, is there enough incentive in the potentially increased value of the home or building to drive somebody to say, okay, I know it's a hassle and it's not square and blah, 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 but it's still worth doing because I can sell the property, I can, you know, re-rent the property or hire rent. I mean, what's the value proposition for who are you pitching to basically take charge of the rehab process? And
Sure.
What's their motivation?
If I had to put them in a hierarchy, and which is difficult, but I think I get the point of your question. It's a good question, Commissioner. This would be, in my mind, would be available. The number one goal is to improve and maintain quality of housing stock in Cook County.
Right.
I guess that's a blanket statement.
Mm-hmm.
Now, realistically, the most ideal situation under that is that a homeowner who intends to continue to live in the property, who can't afford or doesn't have access to traditional means to make the improvements needed, this would be a tool for them. Because if, for example, if homeowner X who has the means and just wants to get a sweetheart deal on a loan, this is not their product. We do not want to undercut the private lending market to provide low-cost loans.
Right.
However, if there's somebody who is maybe on a fixed income or doesn't have the credit score, whatever that situation might be, that can't go to the bank to get the traditional loan, maybe this is an opportunity to do something to their home that they actually really need fixed, like their roof is leaking or their windows are cracked or something like that. Ideally, it's to preserve, because there are a lot of people who might have maybe lower income or on fixed incomes who cannot make those updates to the home, and then because they're not doing that, it wears away on the rest of the longevity of the home.
Mm-hmm.
So we eventually lose a housing unit, 15 years sooner than we otherwise would, or whatever the time frame is. So that's the sort of target, if you can call it a target. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it is targeted at people who want to improve the condition of the building that they're living in, and
Ideally.
and so the driver is desire to have a more comfortable, safe place to live, and access to some financing to help make that happen. So it is really driven at a sort of owner-occupied market, not a real estate developer who's trying to, has a portfolio of properties and is looking for ways to
Correct.
to increase the.
Well, they wouldn't
value.
qualify anyway.
Okay.
Because I would suspect that the requirement would be you would have to be an income of blank to blank to be eligible for the program.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's a landlord in that situation who has properties that are, really has an issue with maintenance, maybe they would qualify. But what we don't want to do is subsidize a property owner from making improvements and then selling their property at a profit because they got a sweet loan or something like that.
Got it. Okay.
Well, the county's had some experience with that, with a revolving loan fund, where, the goal isn't to undercut local lenders, but it's to take on problem situations that lenders can't easily address, or there's some greater good to the county at stake here. And so, that kind of experience actually exists already to some degree. It just needs to be, fleshed out, and I think this is really going a good direction on that.
And commissioners, it might be the case that, one, we get a lackluster response, or two, there isn't really that much interest. I mean, I don't know. I suspect that if we offered free money to people, they would take it, of course. But that's not a very long-lived program. I do need to talk with the county about their revolving loan fund to get a better handle on what opportunities there may already be. But
There are now residential housing
That was my understanding.
opportunities in the
It was for
revolving loan fund.
businesses.
It was funded by the state of Minnesota for the purpose of business development only.
Well, there we go. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I was on that.
Oh, okay.
And Bill, are you on it now?
Yes,
Yeah.
and so is Commissioner Hawkins.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But we did approve a loan for a business with an apartment on top.
With
you know.
house.
All right,
Yeah.
all right.
Halfway there.
But that, yeah. I want to go back, if we can, to the question of outreach to people that might not be on the internet. We would have to pay to publish the survey in the newspaper, but we can write a media release about this and send it to the paper.
And they publish it for free.
And they'll publish it because it's news. And I don't know if you've met Brian Larson.
Not yet, no.
He'll be very helpful.
he's unbelievable. I mean, he's all over the place on
Great.
everything,
Yeah.
and he's extremely helpful.
So we
to
can
building
do
the
a-
community,
yeah.
really. I can't believe how much he,
Great.
Do
was
a
able to
media
put
release and
together.
send it to both WTIP and the paper, and then follow up with the broadcast on the radio, and they'll put it on, well, it won't help people if they put it on the website. But anyway, I can help you with that if you
I
want.
figured you could. I had sent you an email asking for some, thought you just gave them, so fantastic.
Okay.
If there is any language you would like to change or questions you want to tweak, I know we don't have to do it here, but this is just a copy, but please let me know in the next week or so if you want to see
You
some
make a
change.
note right now, your number 10, if you answered yes or maybe to 8 above, which there was no yes or maybe in 8, but it was in 9,
Oh, I might have mistyped that.
you would have spotted it, but.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to look at this and get some thoughts to you in the next couple days. I do have some thoughts.
And I just assume that this will come with a header that says there's an opportunity for, low-interest loans for qualified borrowers, qualified properties. If you're interested, please complete the survey.
Well, there's not an
Well, there's an
opportunity
opportunity
yet.
yet.
There may be an opportunity.
We're creating, we look to create
Yeah, there's a note at the
an
bottom that's,
opportunity.
if it does get created.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Because I want to be careful not to overpromise and underdeliver if
Right.
nothing happens.
Help us create.
But somehow just, I guess if you get this thing in the mail, the first thing it says, where do you live and what do you own? The context is important, and it could be confusing if you don't have some sort of an.
Yeah, there will be a preamble to the
Good,
a
okay.
little narrative. This is for the purpose of the, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, noted. So these are great. If anything else in the next week, please feel free to email it to me, and I'll incorporate it, make some changes, and then I'll work to get it online in a survey and then send it out. And then I'll share what I find.
I'll get with you soon.
Thank you. That's all the extra business I had.
Okay. Well, then we'll do a little round robin if any commissioners have topics to discuss, and I'm going to start with Stacy.
We're in the midst of budgets in the county. There's lots of budget numbers being thrown around, so that's where my head's been in the last week.
Fun.
Thank you for doing the hard work.
Yeah.
And we mentioned earlier that if anything is needed by the advisory committee or the county board, I know we're going to present to the county board at some point, but please call on us to answer any questions.
No, our advisory committee, which meets next week, I'll bring it up, see if there's any real
Questions,
concerns, and
yeah.
then I'll bring it back to this
Great.
board, let you know.
Brady didn't have any questions or concerns about the.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
thank
Good.
you.
Commissioner Doe?
I had a question on the housing report. On page 20, it listed the largest, the employers, the number of employers in the county. And I thought that I called up this morning to see if I could get the numbers for the tribe, because I thought the tribe was the largest employer in the county. And there was a number of places where the tribe was mentioned, but it was not mentioned in this report as who the largest employers were. And I was a little surprised by that. So I wasn't certain. I always thought that it was the largest employer, but I wasn't certain. So I called this morning, didn't get an answer yet. But that was just a little curiosity to me.
That, Commissioner, that question actually came up with Beth Drost and the Losi,
Yeah.
the consultant. And my recollection is, I remember Director Drost saying that prior to the pandemic they were, and then because everything shut down, their employment numbers dramatically reduced.
Right.
And it hasn't caught up since the pandemic, so I don't know if that still is a result of that, where people haven't gone, like they haven't been fully staffed since the pandemic. I remember that was a big player, is what she had said.
Yeah.
But then other than that, I'm not sure why they wouldn't have included it in that. But obviously, Director Drost was immediately involved with the creation of the document, and so I'm presuming that they had talked that through.
Yeah. Okay, good.
That's
Thank
all
you.
I know about it. Maybe you'll learn more.
Yeah.
In my review prior to the final draft of that study, I stated that I wasn't sure that I was in complete agreement with the list of the largest employers either, but
And we did submit those
it is,
comments.
Yeah.
and, yeah.
So,
If you find out, maybe you would check and see if it was considered like the total tribe employment, or if individual subsidiaries of the tribe. because they have forestry, lodge, casino, they have
Right,
different
right,
subsidiaries
right.
that are all within that umbrella.
Yeah.
But maybe just to be interesting to see how it's considered when we look at those numbers.
Okay, good, I'll
Yeah.
absolutely refine that a little bit. It is kind of interesting to me because in the county landmass, the tribal lands are included in the landmass of the county, and yet it's a sovereign nation, so it's a little confusing, I think, when somebody's looking at the whole situation. Sometimes the band is included and sometimes it's excluded because it's a sovereign nation, and so how does that work? And I think that the state and the federal government and the band worked really well on the development of the Grand Portage historical site in the state park. But it's a little tricky sometimes, and so I just made note of that and I'm curious as to how it shakes out.
And the chair and I have talked about that too, in trying to just err on the side of presuming they're included in the statistics when we
Yes.
have them available.
Right.
And then there are some things like property taxes, for example, or parcel IDs, that sort of thing that they're not included because it's sovereign territory.
Right.
So, we include them in the county, but for funding purposes and things, it just depends on the situation.
Sure.
So we have to kind of play it by ear.
That makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
Good catch. Anything else that was top of mind for you, or?
No, no, no. Really, when you sent out your director's report, we joked about drinking from the fire hose. There was a lot of water on that report, let me tell you. I was very impressed.
Yeah.
I'm going to start calling you the Big Gulp.
I'm hydrated, if that helps. I'm feeling fine.
I was
I don't need
impressed
more water right now.
with what was on your list. Thank you for that. That
Yeah,
was
thank
very
you.
informative.
And I really do think it's important to try to get these irons in the fire before the snow flies.
Yeah.
And try to get some stuff set up for next year because it's going to be here like that.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Skildum can attest, early and often is the best time to get engaging with contractors because it's so hard
Yeah.
to get attention.
Yeah.
So, thank you. I'll continue to try to drink. Chris, anything from you?
I don't have anything today.
Bill?
Just any further thinking on the nonprofit? I'm sorry I had to miss the last board meeting. I know there was a discussion. It seemed inconclusive in a sense, other than it'll be continued to be discussed. Is there further thought on that at all?
Well, yes and no. Part of the conversation, Commissioner, is talking with the attorney about that, and had to wait until we had a contract in place. So now we can have more formal conversations about it. The other question is, so one of the things in the list that I have for Freiburger is to ask if we qualify under a certain segment of statute. I think it's 170C or something. That maybe there's a way around the nonprofit status because we're an HRA. So I have some sorting out to do from the experts. Once I find that out, we'll know whether or not it's a path we should pursue or we're good without it for the time being.
Those are exact issues I would raise, is that it's very unusual that a HRA, a formal government body, couldn't do the same thing for a foundation that a nonprofit could. It's not impossible, but it's, so go ahead and ask. That's the right direction. That's great.
Did you ever hear back from the one foundation in the West End?
No, I reached out. Did you?
I was thinking about that. I can make a note to,
Yeah,
Reach
I
out.
sent an email and asked several weeks ago now. I haven't heard anything. I don't know if that individual's out on vacation or something. I'm not sure.
I'll
Thank you.
rattle the door. Okay, Chris?
Just wanted to just check on the strategic plan. I think when we talked about that, that was to come together sometime, in September, and just strikes me that's, if it's helpful, I'm happy to be a sounding board for any sort of interim work along the way, or
Great.
an outline or whatever, but I'm happy to support you in that, because I know you stretch pretty thin, so.
Thank you. Probably take you up on that. Right now, part of it is, of course, I think we have that meeting set in August to
Right.
talk about values and goals and vision. And then, of course, the summit. And then after that, it's going to be, I'm going to try to aggregate all of that and then put it into some package form. So I'm sure as I start doing that, the questions of like, oh, does this make sense, or how should we, I will hopefully be sending it out to the board, and feel free to send me what your thoughts are. And my goal, again, is by the end of September to have that strategic plan. But frankly, it depends on, I would rather give us a 2-week margin window or something to produce something that we're really, of course.
Yeah, I just didn't want you to feel that you needed to disappear behind the curtain, come up with a finished product. And then
Ta-da!
come back.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thank you.
There's, I mean,
I want it to be a
an
cooperative
organic process is, I think, going to yield a better product.
I agree. Thank you for that. Anything else from you, Jim?
I kind of piggybacking on that, I'm reminding us that at the committee of the whole, we did discuss sort of the chain of events that will lead to the strategic plan. And I don't know if we said this out loud, maybe we did, that we would, I guess we did, because I wrote it down on that day, I think. Our next regular board meeting is August 17th at 3 p.m. And we would adjourn the board meeting and then convene a meeting of the committee of the whole. And that is when we would discuss values, goals, and strategies. And then we would share those with the community when we have the housing summit after Labor Day. And then after the housing summit and the input from the community, then we would continue to create the strategic plan, including the input that we heard from the people.
I had the Housing Summit Community kind of input meeting on the 8th of September at 6 p.m.
I think that's right.
Yes, Thursday.
I think we
Thursday
went
after
that far as
Labor
to
Day.
think it
We
through,
did
that,
pick a
you know,
date.
we want
Yep.
to get people there.
We did, yeah.
Speaking of that, commissioners, should we, when would you like to, I don't know, announce that or start, when is a good time to share that we're going to hold that? I believe we said it was going to
This
be in
would be
these
a good
rooms.
time right now if anyone's watching our board meeting. I
I suppose that's true.
September 8th at 6 p.m. I think we could also, in the media release about the survey, we could say that another opportunity for community input will be the summit. But before we go public, did we reserve this room? We better make sure we can say where it's going to be. I think we said we were going to do it here.
We're going to try to do it here.
But we're not going to sit up here away from the
Right.
people.
Was I supposed to make sure we get the room reserved?
No, I don't think so.
Probably.
No,
I
Or
can do
maybe.
that.
Well,
I can
I
reach
can-
out to, I can reach out to
But let her
April.
do it. If she
Okay.
can.
All
let
right,
her
no,
do
well,
it.
I just, yeah.
I'll do it.
Okay.
You're going to do it.
Sure, happy to. I have to talk to her. Very good, okay.
You focus on our
I
budget.
just realized I may have said yes and I forgot.
Right.
Just say yes to the budget.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Okay. So August 17th, I would think we should plan to be here, if the board meeting is 90 minutes, then maybe we should plan to be here another 90 minutes. Everybody okay with that?
I would think so.
We'll book it
Well-
through 5 o'clock, or, excuse me, 6 o'clock.
4:30.
Through 6.
And then-
And maybe we can, I don't know, bring a bag lunch if you need a snack, so we're not
Yeah.
hungry when we're trying to think hard. Maybe we can bring some things to share, or I don't know what people's dietary
Pizza.
needs are, so. Huh?
Pizza.
You can share
Pizza
pizza.
works. Pizza?
Yeah.
Pizza's good.
I will, for that meeting, of course, we'll have the normal agenda, but the agenda might be lighter because we'll be looking at, for that committee of the whole to be talking through, the sort of planning questions, strategic planning questions, so.
Well, right, but don't cut it short if there's things we need to do.
No, if we need to get
Yeah.
through, we'll get through it, sure.
Is there anything you can suggest in terms of us, what we can think about for that, for the second part of the meeting?
Great question, Commissioner. Actually, the open letter you wrote a couple of months ago is sort of along the same lines, in the sense of what do we think of as the values of the HRA? So like what type of organization do we want to be and represent to the public? So how we engage with people, how people perceive us, thinking through that, the long, maybe short, medium, and long-term goals. And of course, strategic plans evolve as the world evolves, but start thinking through that, like what are maybe some tangible things we could start thinking about putting in motion, and where do we want to see like the HRA's role in Cook County in 10 years from now, for example. I mean, honestly, it's hard to go out 3 years from now, but we have to set some aspirational ideas anyway.
Yeah.
Those are just a couple of things. Any
Okay.
other targets you think we should be thinking about? And then, yeah, I'll have some more. I'll have kind of a work through flow to go through so we can prompt some ideas. And if let's see, the director's report is going to be before that, so I'll try to send that out. Actually, some prompts in the director's report to give you a couple weeks to think about that in advance.
And maybe Commissioner O'Brien could work with you on that?
Great, if you would like to.
I'm happy to.
Collaborate on that? Give us some homework to do
My-
before our work session,
my-
so we come prepared with
The answer's great.
some thoughts.
The answers.
Otherwise, we
I'm going to
won't.
be off grid from the 29th till the 9th of August, but that should be plenty of time
Okay.
after I get back to do that.
Well, you'll receive, when you get back, I mean, the first thing, of course, you're going to do is open your inbox and check the director's
I'll do it
report.
before I
After you
get
do
back.
that,
I'll do that before I get back. I'll do that before I get back.
but when you're back and well rested, then you'll have maybe some prompts and you can.
Great. Yeah,
let
that's
me know when you're
terrific. Yeah,
available.
happy to help.
Thank you.
Just along those lines too, probably one of our homework assignments, and presumably we've already done this, but just to make sure, is to read the housing report that was just issued, because that really needs to be, to form, what's possible. And that shouldn't take away from the vision and, those kind of thinking things, but it's going to need to inform, that possibly might inform your priorities, or it might inform, where the money goes. I don't know. But that study was, a long time coming, but it seemed pretty complete. There's a lot of data in there, but the important things are, conclusions that come out of that for any one person, let alone for our community. And so I just would urge everybody to make sure they've been through it. And I haven't killed the tree yet to do that, but I mean, I've been reading it, and with 65 pages or whatever that was.
Yeah. I thought the report was quite interesting and very sobering. I said a couple meetings ago that this is going to be tough, and I mean, all of us know it's going to be tough. It has been tough, and it's not getting easier, it's getting tougher.
Yeah.
But that was a very sobering, some of the conclusions were very sobering. And so I think when we're, I tend to be very theoretical and then go for it. But I think that after reading that report, it's important to sort of roll back to what can actually be done, rather than what we would like to get done, what can actually be done. It was very sobering.
Yeah, I agree, Commissioner. Just as a quick anecdote, on Monday, we had the meeting here about the vacation rentals, and I happened to run into a couple of contractors, not including Commissioner here, in the parking lot, who were part of the conversation, and we just got to talking for a few minutes in the parking lot about I had given a brief presentation at that meeting, and they were saying that the numbers in the report, they think they're even maybe modest as far as the demand, that they thought that it could be higher than that, based on the experiences they're having and how far out they could be booked in the business they've had to turn away. And yesterday I was preparing a presentation for the hospital and the clinic. They're having a joint meeting tomorrow, and so I'm presenting tomorrow morning for their meeting. And in the middle of some things have even changed in the last 2 weeks, that as I'm putting this presentation together, I was feeling sobered and a little, disheartened, if you will, just by how complicated the environment is becoming and how quickly. So,
And one of the things that's not being talked about is the retirement of a lot of contractors in the county. I've talked with some of the other, I'm 72, so I've talked to some of my colleagues, and there's a number of contractors that are retiring, and there's nobody coming up to take their place. Thorson's cement company is, there's people buying cement right now out of Duluth instead of right here. They're kind of winding down stuff, and that's a pinch point that's really going to be difficult. I think it might be really important to sort of reach out as to how we can sort of fill the reservoirs of contractors in the community. If anybody's got any ideas on that, when Viking Plumbing was up for sale, I called my plumbers that I worked with in the cities and told them that it was up for sale. It'd be a great business, a great community. It's just, but, you know, they're all busy. They all got something going down there, so nobody took me up on it. But that was a great opportunity. Now, that's been bought by a plumber, so.
Yeah, he moved up here from the Duluth area, Max.
Yeah, but that's a real pinch point that really has me worried in the county of how many contractors are aging out and getting ill. There's some ones that are pretty seriously ill that can't function.
Been worried about that for a few years here. It's been ongoing for a while. We are actually meeting with Cook County Higher Ed tomorrow morning, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk about. I know that they have offered at times coursework to help people work towards licenses and certificates, and people haven't
Not taken.
attended. So I think it's, I don't know, you know, the trend, of course, in America forever has been go to college, get a bachelor's degree, get a master's degree, get a PhD, get a doctorate, you know, like, how about go to trade school?
Yeah.
So it's a rethinking, but I think that's one of the things that we can help is helping people understand that, you know, plumbers and electricians can earn living wage. You know, it's not, it's good work and it's good pay, and we can find people that are interested in learning those skills.
I think there are a lot of challenges with that, but
Yeah,
we
there
can't
are.
stop trying, but
No,
Right.
there's a generational
We have to-
difference too with perception and jobs and,
And work.
yep, and I think we're going to continue to run into, the housing conundrum that, you know, they can't live here if they don't have a home to buy or rents to get the
Right.
job. So succession planning, actually, I met with an entrepreneur fund and some others, that's a problem countywide. That's a problem nationwide, statewide, regionally, but up here particularly because of the older population. That's going to continue to be a challenge. So we have no shortage of issues to
Right.
work through.
You know, I think it was higher ed that's in the high school has created a program for culinary skills, and now they're training truck drivers. And I'm wondering how those are going, because a plumber or an electrician can earn a lot more than a culinary artist, I'm sure of that, and possibly more than a truck driver, and certainly in that range. And, you know, it's just, I'm just curious as to how those programs are going in relation to this.
So
If they
we
were to
worked
do
for
something else.
a couple of years with the high school and higher ed to create the culinary program using the new facility at the high school, and it didn't work out. Because what happened was, while we were creating the partnership with Hibbing Community College to provide the instructors for the college-level culinary instruction, the high school kids responded overwhelmingly to the culinary program, and so there were no hours of the day available for us to bring in college-level people to use the facility. So the good news is, we got a lot of high school kids that are learning those skills, but it didn't work.
The program at the high school didn't really work.
It didn't work to
get 'em
expand it to a
to
college-level
get it,
coursework,
yeah.
because of the space.
So in 5 years, Chair, we will have broken plumbing, but we'll have good food. is what you're saying.
Well, I could live with that priority. I've got an outhouse.
Everybody can learn how to fix a pipe.
I think that Commissioner
I
Scott
did.
could probably.
Anyone can.
Yeah, me too. You could probably attest to this, but I think that one of the biggest hurdles we have, at least in the most immediate term, is the conditions to begin in the trades. This is not a great time to start. You have to have a lot of faith with the market conditions the way they are to jump into a new trade the way that it is, with rates, with housing starts being canceled, it's a very precarious time to jump in. 2008 wasn't that long ago, and a lot of folks that I talked to still have that in their memory, and they feel like this is the next version of that. So training now would be great. If the bottom were to fall out tomorrow, we could train some people in a couple of years, they'd be ready to go.
It'll
But
cycle up again.
right,
Yeah.
But
To
there's,
build- yeah.
that, we never caught up from that the last recession,
Right.
so I think it takes particularly entrepreneurial person and people to jump into being willing to do that. And there's a gap to fill by all means, but en masse we've been working on this, Duluth was working on this problem for 6 years. The recognition of trades issues and working with the community colleges and the high schools, and it just, some people would do it, but we never reached the level of what they needed.
Why not?
Biggest reason, well, two things. One, the generation, the Zoomers, Gen Z, I think they call them. There's Boomers and Zoomers. I think it's kind of funny because they grew up using Zoom for the pandemic. Anyway, the notion of doing more, let's say, physical or dirty work is not as appealing as doing programming or something on them. I mean, and I'm obviously generalizing here, right? But by and large, that generation is used to growing up with tablets and cell phones, and like they're much more immersed in the screen life. And because, to your point, there's still in academia the perpetual degree-seeking mentality, and that's still by and large perceived as the right path to go. Especially if you're looking at like wanting a middle or upper middle class lifestyle, you should go to get a 4-year degree and all these things. Whereas a plumber or electrician can, make just shy of 6 figures after a few years, depending on the market. So I don't think that's well shared, and I think that it's more of a cultural thing than anything else has been our experience. And so Duluth, like the Denfeld High School in Duluth, had a wonderful shop program, and they started doing trades work with the college, but it just wasn't enough people to catch up, nearly enough. And then brain drain happened. People would leave to go to the metro area because they wanted to get out of town and go where the big city and the energy was. And that happens here too, is what I understand.
Yeah, it's been amazing to me for as long as I've been back here. People have been talking about all the heavy equipment operators in the county that build septic systems and such, who were looking to retire, and they couldn't find anyone to come in behind them and buy their business and their equipment and do that work. And I don't know, it never would have occurred to me in my lifetime, but really there aren't young people that think it's fun to drive the bulldozer and a backhoe and play in the dirt.
My nephew does, but he's 3. And so,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of an age gap.
Yeah. In real life, it hasn't been, I mean, there were several meetings with those contractors, those heavy industry, earth-moving contractors to try to puzzle that out, and we never found the incentive. So if you know what that is, bring it to the table and let's, it's tough. Yeah. Yep. It is what it is.
Correct.
So on that note,
Hope we're all feeling chipper and ready to tackle the
do you
housing
have
crisis.
anything else?
Just to say thank you. It's been, this is month 3. What is it? July. I can't even keep track.
Did you start?
It started end of April. So almost 4 months. It's been a bit of a whirlwind. I just want to say thanks to the board for the support. And I'm hoping, again, I'm really pushing and trying to find something to bring we'll get some things in the ground next year. And as Commissioner Skildon pointed out again, what was it, 7C or whatever, contractor capacity is going to be, if we had all the money today in our bank account, it wouldn't make a difference. We have to find somebody to build it. So we need to get the money because that matters. We need to find projects to queue up, but I'm hopeful, and I'm hopeful that the community partners, the ones that I've talked to, are on board for exploring some new things, and we have to. Because I really think this is worth doing here. I think this is a community worth doing it in. So do a lot of the people. So still optimistic, maybe naively optimistic, but thank you for the support so far, and I'll have more asks of you in the future.
There's a saying, some of the most amazing things were accomplished by people too naive to know that they were possible. So
There you go. There you go.
I guess hopefully that's me. I'm not sure.
Right? The difficult takes time, the impossible just takes longer.
I think
We
there's a fire hose involved in any of those.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
I can attest.
Yeah. Yeah.
We are, I think, with the county's creation of this HRA and hiring of you, Jason, we are in a better position to see something happen next year than we were, still, I'm going to say it, a year ago at this time. We didn't even have an HRA. And so it, we're a good team. The community has energy to solve this problem and a passion for it and a commitment to it. And I thank you for your leadership and for being here and working.
Yeah, of course.
Because without you, we wouldn't be getting
Well,
this-
someone else would be doing it.
Well, yeah, I mean, right, but it's all of us. We're all pulling on the oars together, and
Yes.
hopefully this boat's gonna go somewhere.
Well, yeah, we
It
shouldn't
will go
forget the
somewhere.
commitment of the county and the business community to housing, a year and a half ago or whenever it was made, that, they gotta forget about economic development for the time being, because there's no place to house anybody up here that could do those jobs, and that resulted in the HRA creation, and that's what really impressed me, was that it was a true community coming together on housing as a priority, and even from a business community that, would rather be working on their own promotion and whatever, coming to the realization, we gotta do something here, so let's go do it.
We'll keep at it.
All right.
I
Yeah.
am just, sorry, having a last minute thought. Stacy, does the community leadership still, the large group meet like
It's on-
every other month?
Right, every other month, and it's on a Thursday, and the next one is in August, and I can't remember the exact date right now.
So I'm gonna make myself a note to ask James if the HRA could be on that August agenda,
No,
just to provide, it's a Zoom meeting still, right? So far
yeah,
it
we
has
haven't
been.
met in person.
Who's the?
So the community leadership, it started as what used to be called the joint powers, was the county, the city, the hospital, the school district. Then they added the EDA when I was there, and now it's added some more people. Some are working specifically on diversity, equity, and inclusion kinds of things. But it's just an opportunity for every other month representatives from those groups to come together, because they're all leaders and a lot of the elected board members, to share information about what everyone's working on and to discover if there's synergies and support for each other's work.
Sounds great.
So I think it would be great if you and/or I could attend that meeting.
Didn't we already attend that?
We
Yeah.
did one.
Okay, that's what I'm
We
thinking.
did the
I was like having deja vu. I was like,
No,
I
we
swear I did that.
We did the housing work group,
Oh, but not the full
but
group.
not the full group.
Oh, there's another group.
Oh,
It's the,
yeah.
right, that
Oh,
was,
okay,
there were
okay.
two committees.
Okay.
One was housing work group and one is the, the
Racial equity.
racial equity. And then they meet 1 month, and then the whole group meets
Oh, I
in
see,
the
I see.
alternate months. So I would like us to meet with the.
If you think it's useful,
full-
I'm happy to do it.
Yes, I think it could be, so I'm gonna put that on my list.
Oh, we have to adjourn the
Yes.
meeting, by the way.
Bobby's not
We will.
always.
Oh, no, I just want to remind, I didn't, before people left, I wanted to make sure they,
Yeah.
good, very good.
So I'll ask James about whether it would be on the agenda. Because that group was very supportive in creating the HRA, and I think they could be supportive in our budget request for 2023. And okay,
Transparency's good.
yeah. All right, then. Any other business? Hearing none, a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
And a second?
Second?
Chris and Chris. Yeah, really, we're not
Nice for
sure
lack
if
of
we
a
want
second.
to.
Now what do we do? Now what do we do?
Very symmetrical.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary. Running the meeting.
Do you happen to know?
And then I just remind you before you have conversation, until we turn off the, unless you want the public to hear your conversation, the record, the broadcast and
beautiful
stuff.
car.
Yeah, thanks.
For the public
So
record.
are you able to go do that, or? Okay.
Has it been,
Actually, I think
any
April is-
experience?
Is April still